Affairs. Good evening, sir.
Good evening to you. Thank you.
It's good to have you.
Good to have you too.
And for the gentlemen, it's a pleasure to host you all for the first time. Professor has been here, and thank you for gracing our invite here. But a few topics that you need to be paying attention to that are picking steam, especially the deputy president across the country there in Kenya. The Senate trial is ongoing. The High Court kicked out his claim to be able to decline the trial going on there. That's the story you need to be able to pick up. Rigathi Gachagua could end his deputy presidency maybe as soon as this week ends. That's one of the stories we're picking on. But also, the electoral unconstitutional private members bill that is being tabled by Honorable Mathias Mpuga seems to have had its clarity on where it's going. And finally, today, Madam Chisaka, Engineer Luimbazi, and Dr. Okello have been summoned CID, but also as proceedings go on there, we'll be developing that story and letting you know exactly what happens. Let's get into it. Let me give you a few details. The signing happened, and the funding that is proposed is 2.7 billion euros there. The route we're looking at is 273 kilometers from Malaba to Kampala, but also in total we're looking at 1,700 kilometers that are supposed to be made of this standard gauge railway. We're also looking at routes from the north, Toro, Gulu, Nimle, and all the way to South Sudan, which is about 751 kilometers. We're also looking at the western route, which is Bihanga, Kasese, Miramba Hills, and Mpondwe. There we're looking at both DRC and Rwanda, which comes to about 665 kilometers. This standard gauge railway, what does it mean for all of us? What does it mean for trade? And it's better I start with the Canon. Canon, you are at the helm of this concept developed in 2008 by the president, 2013 groundbreaking by the East African countries, 2017 the Chinese came in, 2024 we seem to have started as of December this year. What is our status? What does this look like as the standard gauge railway gets kicked off?
Yeah, thank you very much, our moderator. The standard gauge railway, you have a lot of history on it. 2008 is when the vision is conceived by none other than His Excellency the President, together with his counterpart then, His Excellency the President of Kenya, who was Mwai Kibaki then. And the vision was East Africa as a region needed to put up a modern railway that would cross and connect the port of Mombasa through the cities of Nairobi, of Kampala, and the neighbors in Rwanda and South Sudan, and eventually the DRC. Yes, the vision has taken long, but that's what the Bible tells us. In Habakkuk, it says that the vision is here, let someone, the one who runs with it, run with it. But when you are running with it, sometimes you get lost. But the encouragement is that even if it seems to linger, you wait, it will come to pass. And I think that is exactly what you are talking about, which has eventually ended up with the Monday signing of the commercial contract agreement with the company called Yapi. That phrase is out, and even before that, we have been acquiring land. Since that time, 2016, we have been acquiring land for the corridor to show the determination of the government of Uganda that actually this standard gauge railway will come someday. It has delayed, but I see it arriving. So far, we have been acquiring land from Malaba towards Kampala. We have now just entered Jinja. We have acquired 134 kilometers out of that route that you have mentioned, up to the end of Mayuge, and we have entered Jinja. Now we are paying. When I say acquiring, means we are paying the compensation. We are paying the compensation in Jinja. We have come into Buikwe to disclose to the people the amounts of the assets that we are going to take, and then thereafter we shall come into Mukono, Wakiso, and Kampala. Now, all of this shows viewers that the government of Uganda is serious and determined that the standard gauge railway will come. Why should the government insist that the government, the SGR must come? It is about the transformative nature of that, what we call the backbone the transformation. There will be a transformation in this country in terms of transportation, because we expect, and it is true, that the standard gauge railway is promising to be a modern railway. It is therefore will be faster than what we have seen before. It will be reliable, much more reliable than what we have seen before. It will be efficient, than what we have seen before. It will be safe in terms of the cargo and people moving. And most of all, it is referred to as a high capacity railway. High capacity means the capacity for it to haul or carry cargo is something that we have not seen in this country before, and we are going to see it in the next 48 months. We are going to see this high capacity. The example of high capacity, viewers, is that this train which is moving on the standard gauge railway, one train will be hauling behind it, it will be carrying 4,000 tons at a go. 4,000 tons. And that one is almost equivalent to 200 trucks on the road. That is the high capacity we are talking about. And then when we talk about being fast, this whole train will be moving from Mombasa to Kampala in one day, compared to the 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 days that we have been taking. This is the kind of railway I actually talking about. It will transform the economy of this country. And because it is fast, because it is high capacity, the cost of moving that cargo will be lower. Today, we are talking about maybe moving a container from Mombasa to Kampala, maybe costing something like 3,200 or 3,400, whatever, dollars. But we promise that for SGR, that cost will come down to about 50%. That is 1,600, and even beyond, even less, as the capacity is built up. We do expect that at its apex, this rail that we are putting in place today, in the next few, maybe 20 or something years, it should be moving 25 million tons of cargo every year. And today you can say, but where will this one come from? The statistics are already on the world. Today we are moving into Uganda at the border there, registration if you see. We are doing about 20 million tons. Now most of that is on the road today. Most of it is on the road. For us in Uganda Railways, we are taking part of it, but most of it, maybe 90-something% is on the road. That is why, viewers, you see our roads do not stay. They are pulverized as soon as they are commissioned. They are pulverized, and somebody comes and says, no, they did maybe a shorter job. No, it is simply overloaded. Maybe I will stop there for that.
Canon, you give us a very rosy picture, beautiful, looking at the future, but also the portion you quoted in the Bible also says you write it on a tablet, which seems that's the tablet we want to know.
And run with it.
What is in this concession, and where is the money coming from?
The money for the construction of the standard gauge railway is coming from the government of Uganda.
The whole 2.7...
Part of it will be from the treasury directly. Part of it will be borrowed, but still be paid back from the treasury. That's why I'm emphasizing that it's from the government of Uganda. I think you understand. Part of it will come from the treasury directly, but the part of it will be borrowed. But even that which is borrowed will be paid back from the treasury. Thank you very much.
So what are the details in this concession? Because you were part of the signing, you were there as General Katumba represented the country to sign it.
Yes.
What was part of it, and what are the concessions in there that Ugandans should be excited about?
Yeah, in the agreement, first of all, let me talk about the railway itself, the technical specifications. The standard gauge railway is an electrified railway. We are no longer going to see diesel smoke going up into the atmosphere. It is called electrically driven. And of course, as you are aware, electricity is not in short supply in this country. It is one of the commodities which is going to be a lot in plenty. And this SGR is going to consume about 100 megawatts of electricity. And we are already in conversation with the electric generator that they can actually give us that electricity in a reliable manner, so that it does not fail. It won't be load shedded so that the train fails in the section. They will give us electricity which is sufficient. They will ensure that it's coming from two directions, that should something happen to one direction, the other one will automatically come so that the train will move. That is one specification. The other one, as it's called a standard gauge railway. Standard gauge means it's a bigger railway, it is wider, and therefore more stable. That's why it has to be moving faster and more safely. And secondly, thirdly, in the technical specifications, we are talking about the curvatures which we see on the railways that we have been having will be completely dealt with, they will be out. That is why today the rail we have from Malaba to Kampala is about 250 something kilometers. But this one here is going to be, by the way, I want to make a clarification that it is 270 kilometers, yes, but the straight as the crow flies from Malaba to Kampala is 232 kilometers. These other 40 are the the sidings we are taking to the factories. In Tororo for the cement, for Dongsong. In Kampala we are going to Bukasa Port. In Kampala again we are going to those industrial areas. That accounts for 40 kilometers. But the straight as the crow flies is 230 kilometers, shorter than what we have because we have dealt with the curves and the heavy gradients, so that we make it faster and give it more capacity. Those are technical specifications. The other aspects of the agreement is that it is going to be delivered in 48 months. 48 months at the cost that we have mentioned. And the minister emphasized, and the contractor is aware that this would be delivered at the inside the cost and inside the time. That is the beauty of it.
Canon, and I want us to be as honest as possible. The one in Tanzania started in 2017, was launched June this year. Way over schedule, 7 years. What guarantees do you have that this will be within time and within the finances? Because if we look at the expressway, one of the most expensive roads in the world, a kilometer was $9.2 million. So really, how are you going to guarantee that it's within time and within the money?
You see, the good thing, viewers, is that we are number 3 in the region doing the standard gauge railway, learning lessons from others. So if you have now observed well that Tanzania took 7 years, we have learned lessons from Tanzania. We know why it has taken 7 years. We know it. We have all the information from Tanzania itself. We are avoiding that kind of direction. As I told you, that the cost is 2.7 billion euros, but it's broken into two. Part of it is to be that 300 and something million euros is to be spent on instruction. Now, but we are saying that all the procurement will be done by the contractor. In Tanzania, it was different. Some of the procurements were done by the government. Where for us, we are saying, no, let the contractor take the risk. So we shall give him instruction, procure locomotives. Then the money is available. Procure wagons. But in Tanzania, those were procured by the government, and there was a delay in setting up. So we have learned lessons from those who are ahead of us.
Thank you. We'll come to the lessons there. Let me come to Honorable Engineer Kafeero. As the Chief Mechanical Officer, as Uganda Railway Corporation, how prepared are you, especially for the standard gauge railway? The difference is between 1,000 to 1,400 millimeters there. You have been very good at the meter gauge railway. How prepared are you for the standard gauge railway?
Thank you so much. And I would like to begin by congratulating Ugandans and indeed the team at the SGR for this big milestone that we have achieved. Almost a decade now, ever since we began talking about this. There's been some back and forth here and there, but I am happy that the new team headed by the Canon here, Canon Perez Wamburu. There's my friend there, Miriam. They work very closely. Of course, under the able leadership of the minister, the General Edward Katumba Wamala, and our immediate supervisor, the Minister Fred Byamukama, they have offered wonderful leadership. That's why now we can realize, and we have renewed the hope of Ugandans to be able to achieve, and now we know the standard gauge railway is back on track. Of course, I have a history about it, having chaired a select committee of Parliament that investigated the procurement of the first contractor, the Chinese you talked about. It was a 7-member committee which I chaired. So given that background, I have all reasons to congratulate this new team. They have really done a wonderful job. As the URC Act stands today, this team, the project team, has to implement the project, that is constructing the railway line, acquiring or procuring the rolling stock, and thereafter hand over to Uganda Railways Corporation, where I belong, where I am the chief mechanical engineer, to operate and make sure that we give a return on investment made by our government. We are ready. We are ready for this huge task. Of course, we have also a bad history as Uganda Railways Corporation, having had a bad concession, which you could be aware of, which took us back 100 or 1,000 miles. What we are doing now is to revamp the Uganda Railways Corporation. We have made very big strides now, of course with the support of Government of Uganda. They have provided us with the funding, number one, to rehabilitate the old meter gauge. You see the difference between what was signed on Monday and what we are operating now is the width of the railway lines, what we call the gauge. The standard gauge railway is 1,435 millimeters wide, but the meter gauge is actually 1,000 millimeters. That's why we call it meter gauge. So this one is wider, and in railway engineering, the wider or the narrower the gauge, the lower the speed. So you can see that now we are advancing from the low speeds which we are operating at. This old railway, the trains operate at speeds much less than even 80 kilometers per hour. That is the design speed. But the actual operating speeds can be even lower than 50 kilometers per hour because of the status of the track. It was built almost 100 years ago. Now we are rehabilitating it. It was built with steel sleepers, which is outdated technology. Today, world over, people are using concrete sleepers so that you can have better speeds, of course, stronger and more durable railway lines, but also the axle loads. Through the rehabilitation we are doing right now, we have been handling an Imathia project. Imathia is a Spanish company which has been working on our Kampala Mukono section, which is complete now. We have upgraded the line from the old steel sleepers railway to now the new concrete sleepers. Concrete sleepers are much stronger. They give us a much bigger axle load For example, the original railway line had 18 ton axle load, but now it is 25 because we have even increased the size of the rails themselves from 80 pounds now to 120 pounds.
Honorable Kafere, let me come to a question before I get to Mr. Kareba here to give me some details about the traders. You talked about the Chinese. Why did they pull out? You were on a committee, you did an evaluation. Why did the Chinese pull out of this?
The Chinese actually did not pull out. The Chinese were ejected. It was the instructions of HE, the president, having realized that the earlier team, before the team led by Canon Perez Wamburu here, came into place. There was a team first there. Some elements were kind of indisciplined. So His Excellency the President realized that this contract they had signed was actually inflated. I remember in one caucus meeting where the Honorable Bahati and I were, the President came and said this contract was inflated by almost $100 million. So,
Honorable, the concession there was 2.2 billion. The reason was you expected China to get funding from its government. The last bit there was China expected, the Chinese company expected the railway line from Kenya to come from Naivasha to Malaba. At what point was it inflated? Because this is $2.2 billion. What we're talking about now is $3 billion. So clarify that area for us to understand.
This was the explanation of the president. What you need to understand that the first contract was not turnkey. It was construction of the track. It was not turnkey the way this one is, meaning this one includes acquisition of the rolling stock, the trains themselves. It includes all that. So it has to be much bigger. It is a project finished, you just have the trains, you turn the key, ready to roll. So there was no way just construction of the track would cost that amount without acquisition or procurement of the rolling stock. So it is just logical that there was something not right. So HE, the president, said, no, I cannot allow this. We have to go back to the drawing board. That's why I say the Chinese were just stopped. They didn't just pull out because they wanted to. Then that's how now government identified this new contractor who just signed recently. And we hope we are getting a much better deal, better than before.
Thank you. Mr. Kareba, you have been in clearing and forwarding for 40 years. You lead the Shippers Council. You have been at the forefront of seeing cargo and containers coming into this country. When you hear about this SGR coming from the meter gauge railway, what is your notion? What do you feel about it? What do you make of it?
Thank you, moderator. First of all, I've been in it for 51 years. And at times we tend to forget where we came from. We rush to start discussing the standard gauge. We need to look at what was there before, why didn't it function, what caused the problems. Now, if all those problems are still there, with the standard gauge railway, it will not solve the problems. Moderator started work on that route in 1973. during the old East African Community. And railways was under Uganda, East African Railways under us as the department of the East African Community, the original one. So that was one unit under one management, under one planning, all of it done for the whole of East Africa. Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. Of course, in 1977, there were problems, but before that, I can tell you that I was in Mombasa and 80% of all the cargo coming to Uganda used to come by rail. 80%. Then what happened to go now to, I will tell you the one from Dar es Salaam to here is about 3% from 80. Now, when the community collapsed, first of all, the way the assets of the community were divided among the member states was not a very fair deal. Not only from there, even the ships, East African member states, moderator, each state had a ship on the high seas under the East African National Shipping Line. The one for Kenya was called MV Uhuru. The one of Uganda was MV Uganda. The one of Tanzania was MV Ujamaa. And there was a fourth one from Zambia, because at that time, Zambia was pushing to join East African Community, which was MV Murungushi. So all those, now when it happened so fast, what was on the Kenya side remained on the Kenya side. The same thing happened with the East African Airways. Most of the aircrafts were on the Kenya side. They remained on the Kenya side. So now we go Kenya Airways, Uganda Airways, Tanzania Airways. We break up. Then come the concession is talking about. Uganda and Kenya go one way because Tanzania couldn't go with that one. They take their own. The things that were promised during that concessioning, the money that was promised by the investors, that they were going to invest in the concession, were never met. All they did, Araviara, they took the best wagons from Uganda, took them to Kenya. The best locomotives which were here were taken to Kenya, and Araviara made money on the Mombasa-Nairobi route and sort of abandoned the Uganda route. And I think up to today, engineer, there are still wagons that are still on the Kenya side, which are Ugandan and even in Tanzania. So you can see that because of that fragmentation, management was a problem. The one of Tanzania did exactly the same, came, collected the money, they packed their bags and left. Invested nothing. And that's when he rests in peace, President Magufuli came on board and he turned things around and talked about the rehabilitation of the meter gauge railway. Why he did that, he looked at what was going on here about the standard gauge railway. When Uganda was working together with Kenya and the Chinese, he looked at it, and first of all, he was not ready to commit, because if you borrowed that money, you must give a collateral. For him, he was not ready to give the Mombasa, the Dar es Salaam port as a collateral to the Chinese, because he saw what happened in Sri Lanka. They did that for them, and within 4 or 5 years, they were not able to pay. So the Chinese took the port of Sri Lanka, they ran it, they paid themselves until they decide if they have paid enough. And Magufuli said, I can't take that route. But I'm sure Kenya took that route. And then we also realized that, what are we going to? So all these things came on. And we are saying, fine, Magufuli he decided not only to rehabilitate by putting concrete sleepers. He increased the capacity of the rail and also the capacity both of the rail and the cargo carried. I was carrying 20 wagons. There's now the new and rehabilitated can carry 30 wagons, which means we have an extra 10 wagons. And it is faster because it used to take 2 days from Dar es Salaam to Manza. Now it is going to take like 1 day and a few hours. So all these things, you can see they are all still in play. They have done theirs, we are doing ours. Now what happened to Kenya? They came on up to Naivasha. And I think they were not having enough money to continue because the whole exercise was up to Maraba. Then the Uganda would take over from Maraba up to Kampala and eventually Kigali. When they got there, they got stuck. You know what happened? They started insisting that Uganda cargo must come by rail, by SGR from Mombasa to Naivasha. We stood up as owners of cargo. We said, no, you have no right to determine for me who is going to carry my cargo. They had already carried wagons up to there, and that to be returned to Mombasa. So we were saying, what you have not given us any rates. You have, first of all, where the offices, the nearest place you could have an office where the Naivasha station is was 30 kilometers for a clearing agent to have an office to be able to operate there. The truck that the road that was going there, if 2 trucks met, one had to reverse up to the end. There was no way where 2 trucks could meet.
Of the 30 kilometers?
Of the 30 kilometers. And that's the way, that's why they were telling us, now you must pick your cargo from there. We went there, they said, and they had told us everything. They told General Katumba, I'm saying it's public, can ask him, I think then it was Mr. Macharia who was Minister of Transport. He said everything is in place. We sent a team, you go and verify, come back and give us a report. And that's the report they gave General Katumba, and he said, no, we cannot do that. And that's when we said, you take us to our cargo back to Mombasa, we shall decide. If you are giving us a good business, we shall definitely rail with you. But up to Naivasha, and then what? So now you have to start how to move the cargo from Naivasha up to Kampala. So if the Naivasha, Maraba part of it is not complete, we can do ours, we can finish it, and we shall be very happy to be there, but I don't think it will serve the purpose it was intended to.
And Mr. Kariba, you mentioned the challenges, the shortcomings that are there, and you give us a very good background. But also you mentioned the interests of the different states. Let's talk about Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. Let's put aside the other 5 that are there.
Yes.
The individual interests
yes.
of these states, from history to where we are, can they align? Is that a possibility that we can align to think the same, especially for the good of traders, for the good of shippers like yourself? And where can we find that alignment?
That alignment is going to be difficult. As I said, I've been in this industry right from the time when the original East African Community was on, and Dr. Julius Nyerere, may he rest in peace, could not meet with Amin. So there was never a summit when Amin was the president. 2, the ideology of Tanzanians on socialism and looking at Kenya as being capitalist. They used to call it the man eat man society. That was Julius Nyerere. Because for him he wanted to go socialist, Kenyatta couldn't. So again now you have Amin here, you have socialism in Tanzania, and that's how Kaunda was coming on board, and then you had the Kenyatta on the other side. Any meeting you have ever been in, if Kenya says A, Tanzania says B without even thinking much about it. That is, they know it and everybody knows it whenever you go. During when even we were negotiating for the reintroduction of the new community, whenever we went for meetings, it was always postponed. There was never an agreement between the two. So all these things, and as you said, now look at the problem that there is with Rwanda. When we had a problem with Rwanda, and there was the border was closed. Now imagine if now you had the standard gauge.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Kariba, and a very good lessons there. Professor, hearing Mr. Kariba and hearing those challenges from back then, looking at where we are, East African community with 8 countries, Honorable Kafero has given us good statistics. Canon Engineer Perez has also given us what the SG is all about. First and foremost, the challenges that locomotives that were brought in by URC were either bigger or smaller than the rail itself. Then we have this whole thing that we're a country that things really don't get in order. What confidence do you get from this standard gauge rail concession that we just had on Monday? Does it give you confidence?
Yes, thanks, Timothy. I think the standard gauge railway gives us some confidence. At least the experts have spoken for it. We are not experts in that field. So it gives us confidence in as much as it is talking about improving transport, improving connectivity. Like on the panel we had, one of its strongest things is that people are going to be traveling from Mombasa to Kampala in one day. And that's a very good thing. Goods are going to be transported in one day, and that's a very good thing. But I think for me, even as we discuss the standard gauge railway, we need to be aware of the ecosystem in which it's going to operate. Of course, the neighbor here has talked a lot about what challenges we have had all along and that were bound to happen with the standard gauge railway. But for me, I would want to go beyond the standard gauge railway to say, first and foremost, why are we constructing the standard gauge railway? So that it can carry X volume of goods. Do we have those goods and services? If we don't have those goods, what do we do to generate the goods? When you look at our production in this country, we always pride in this being a very agricultural country. Unfortunately, largely our agriculture is still very peasantry. There have been many cases where people talk about our biggest challenge in Uganda that we don't have enough volumes to win some of the deals we want to win. At one point, you're told you must provide X amount of moringa seed to the Scandinavian countries. You just don't have it. You don't have enough production in terms of food crops or whatever you want to move. So we celebrate the standard gauge railway, but we have to make sure that if it ever comes, it actually does what it's supposed to do. Because if the carriages keep coming and there's nothing for them to carry and take back, then that will be a problem. Of course, we're also very hopeful about the standard gauge railway, but within the ecosystem, we also need to deal with other things. Are we going to operate free movement across states, or are we going to continue operating with the checkpoints? Because the biggest complaint, even with the road transport, is that the checkpoints are too many and the taxes are so high. So if the railway has been made to overcome some of these challenges, can it be the platform on which we use also to deal with other things that challenge free movement within the region, that challenge free movement of people and goods within the nation? So I think it is a very good strategy. I am not one who believes there shouldn't be development because there's nothing there that roads are going to do. But I think what is important, we need to look long term and not just look short term and say, okay, it has gone like this, what is the cost? Of course, there's the fact that it's going to increase our foreign debt burden since we are borrowing a lot of money. I think it's 2.2 billion USD that is going to go into this. So there is that aspect. But you see, not developing is not one of our options on the table. I think as the SGR team prepares, I hope we are, as a country, we are running an integrated process of planning and of thinking so that those who are in economic monitoring, those who are in economic production, can actually make sure that when the railway line finally comes, it's not wasteful expenditure. So it will happen, but we need to make sure it's successful.
Before I get to the Honorable Minister, you are a social scientist. Let's leave the data that came from from UBOS. But the population has grown.
Yes.
There is compensation challenges that we already see in some of the roads or government projects that are there.
Yeah.
Even as we talk about the East African crude oil pipeline there,
Yes.
the challenges that are there.
Yeah.
The land is not growing in size. The corruption is also as much as possible. How is this going to happen?
I think it's going to happen by us asking what they have been able to do and how they were able to do it. Because it's true they have compensated people. We cannot, at least in this regime, they don't condone grabbing people's land without compensating them. So there have been all attempts to ensure that people who are being moved away for government projects are compensated. It's the creation of the kind of land laws we run in this country, that there's a lot of private ownership of land, there's communal ownership of land. In short, the way the land is managed also makes it very difficult for investors to access it and use it, or for government to acquire it for bigger long-term projects like this. But since they have been able to pay people, you said from Malaba to Mayuge, why would we doubt them to pay the rest? I know what is remaining is the longer thing, going up north, going west, and going south. So I haven't made the math, but probably Canon Wamburu will tell us how actually, what the cost is going to be and how much money they have, and whether they are not going to wipe out the 2.2 billion, which has largely been borrowed to construct the railway line and not to do compensation. So. Yeah. And
also a statement I had somewhere that 50% has already been covered. Kampala and Wakiso are the biggest challenges. But let me come to the Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, and having been in one docket, both finance, but now let's focus on the one for trade. Numbers given to us by the Canon are between 3,500 to 4,000 for a container of cargo to come in. What impact do you see the SGR have on the economy, in your view, in the area of trade?
Thank you very much. I first of all want to congratulate His Excellency the President, because this was his vision for achieving this milestone of signing the standard gauge railway contract. The standard gauge railway is going to be a game changer for our economic development. It's going to open a new page on our journey towards the prosperity and full modernization of our economy. It has been proven throughout history that there is no country that actually has developed or developed faster without a railway, a standard gauge railway, because it facilitates a number of things in terms of trade. So this also fits into what we have been trying to do to facilitate the growth of our economy. One is to reduce the cost of doing business. We have done some work on reducing the cost of electricity by generating more. From 1986, now we are towards 2,000 megawatts with the launching of Karuma. We have also tried as much as possible to reduce the cost of money by investing in UDB to make sure that people can access money for development, especially those who are in large scale, and then the parish development model for small scale, and the Myoga. But we have been having a challenge of the cost of transport. As Canon has said, a 40-feet container now will cost one $3,500 from Mombasa to Kampala, but by road. But with rail, it will cost us 1,500. So making a difference of almost
50%.
2,000. And actually this is going, given the volumes that we are bringing into the country, it's going to be saving $2 billion every year in terms of transport costs for the traders and also industries. It will facilitate, the standard gauge railway will facilitate markets. We have opened markets. One of the laws that the Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives plays in the economy is to open markets for what we are producing, add value to what we are producing, and then find the markets. We have signed protocols with East African Community. I could see our old comrade having some fears that maybe we will not work together as a community, but just to let you know that really we are moving. There are difficulties, but we are moving forward. This East African community with a population of 336 million people, which is going to grow to 886 million people, is a huge market that needs facilitation in terms of transport. The other day, our friend, His Excellency Ruto, I was in Nairobi, was saying he tried to move a container from Nairobi to Accra, and it took him 3 weeks. And yet, remember, we have signed the African Continental Free Trade Area with a population of 1.2 billion now, which will be almost 2.5 billion. So with the standard gauge railway, we are going to open markets, reach out to markets which we have not been reaching. One, the DRC Congo will be faster. As we speak now, we're exporting over 500 million US dollars to DRC Congo without loads. Yes, we are doing some good loads there. That's the reason why we are coming in. But with a railway, it will actually help us to export even more within the East African community, but also in the African Continental Free Trade Area. But most importantly, the standard gauge railway will also help the industrialization of our economy. We are talking about exploiting the iron ore in the Chigezi region, Kabale, Rubanda, and Kanungu, and some parts of Chisoro, and also Ruchiga. We have deposits worth 312 million tons of iron ore. This iron ore, to be turned into steel, you need coal. We are getting coal from TZ. So imagine if we are going to have lorries carrying coal from TZ to Chigezi. So the standard gauge railway helps now, for example, to facilitate the development of industries of copper in Kasese. That's why the railway is going that side. So it will help industrialization. Industrialization will create jobs. Industrialization will create revenue. Industrialization will eventually put money in the pockets of Ugandans. It will also help transport those volumes of raw materials that are required for industries. If you have been to, for example, roofings, and you see the materials we use to produce steel, which are imported from Japan and other areas, very huge materials that will need transport like the standard gauge railway. And also indirectly, we reduce the maintenance of our roads and of course the carnage. You see the accidents we are getting on the way, the maintenance of our roads. Where you need 100 trucks on the road, that will be just consumed by 2 or 3 wagons of a railway, and it's transported in one day where you need 7 days. So the benefits to the economy are going to be so huge. It will also create a green economy in terms of environment. It is electric. There are no fuels fuming up and down. So it will help in terms of environment. So the benefits of the standard gauge railway to our economy are enormous in terms of saving resources for transport costs, in terms of fast-tracking the industrialization agenda of our country in terms of opening up and facilitating the markets that we have been fighting for, especially under the African Continental Free Trade Area and the East African community. So it's a good thing that we should welcome. We couldn't have gotten a Christmas gift, though we are still in October. We couldn't have gotten actually an independence gift. This is an independence gift for our country, and Uganda should be celebrating. We are hoping and we are very sure that the financial closure will happen sooner than people do expect. And once that is done, then we start moving. So investment of 2.7 billion is worth it. People should understand that, Uganda should understand that the 2.7 billion is really worth it. This standard gauge rate also, in terms of our commitment as the NRM, should tell us, and Uganda should really say that when President Museveni promises something, even if it takes a little bit longer, but it happens. He conceived this vision some years ago, and some people were still doubting whether this will ever happen. So the signing of this agreement the other day really rejects the counsels of those who were doubting that it will never happen. So I'm very excited that as we celebrated independence a few days ago, after that we signed the standard gauge railway commercial contract, which is going to liberate us economically, in connectivity, and in so many ways.
Honorable Minister, fortunately you fall in the trade docket, and we import, and Professor said it well, we import more than we export. What does this mean for our deficit of balance of trade, but also having come from the docket of finance? Already our debt burden is about 96 trillion there, upwards, upwards of 50% of GDP. What does this mean? Since the turnaround, this is a long-term venture. It is not turnkey and money to pay itself. What does that mean for our balance of trade deficit, but also what does it mean for our debt as a country?
For our debt, you see the way we measure the debt to GDP ratio, which is one of the key indicators that we look at, is that you have debt. If debt is say, for example, 40, and your GDP is 100, you are getting 40%. So if you grow the economy to more than 100 and the debt remains 40, then the debt to GDP ratio comes down. In other words, the burden comes down. So investments in production will grow the economy. And when you grow the economy, you are growing the GDP. And when the GDP grows, then the debt, the burden of debt comes down. The burden of debt comes down. So investments like SGR, which will facilitate trade, exports, which will facilitate the growth of industries, which will facilitate the trade, will actually grow the economy and therefore help us to reduce our burden for debt. In the short run...
I'll jump in there. Debt rollover, I think 2022-2023 was about 8 trillion. It went up to 12. It's suspected to go to 20. Really, where is the debt coming down if it's not just going up? Because we're just paying interest. We're not, and it's rolling over, and we have money that is redundant of 14.4 trillion that is unused loans. Please help us understand how debt is coming down.
No, debt is coming up because we are borrowing to invest in the economy. We are borrowing to finance our priorities, and these priorities must be the right priorities. And an investment in standard gauge railway is actually the right priority to grow the economy. And as we grow the economy, then the debt to GDP reduces. If the economy remains static and you are borrowing more, then the burden of the borrowing becomes bigger. So investing in production, investing in projects that facilitate trade, in other words, grow the economy, then it's a good thing to do, and it will reduce our debt burden. So if you invest in a standard gauge railway, that's going to facilitate exploitation of our iron ore. You are going eventually to reduce the importation of steel, which now stands at $1 billion for Uganda, 3 billion for East African community, 6 billion for Africa. So if you are investing in those projects that help us to grow the economy, growing the economy meaning facilitating industrialization, facilitating trade, creating jobs so that people can spend here and there, putting money in the pockets of Ugandans, then you reduce the debt burden. So you shouldn't worry about this. But also, this is going to facilitate exports. I have told you a few minutes ago that as we speak now, with even limited infrastructure we have through DRC Congo, we're exporting to DRC Congo, as an example, over $500 million. You imagine if we had a standard gauge railway that reaches DRC Congo, massive. We're exporting over $200 million to South Sudan. If now the standard gauge railway reaches Juba, where you are supposed to transport goods in 2 weeks, you take 2 days. The turnaround of events becomes much faster. So this project is a very important project for us. It's a change maker. It will open a page on our journey to economic prosperity.
Thank you very much. Let me read some feedback before we take a break. Someone sends in a message from Busia and said, say hello to Omhongo Canon. Canon, someone sends you greetings and says, my name is Kansime Jonan. We cannot wait to have the metro station and save time to travel to Kampala. Okay. Stephen says, thank the guests for their contribution. May I know whether the cost of construction of the SGR is also higher in Uganda as compared to the neighboring country, and as it was alleged for the roads in Uganda? This is Joel from Lira. Okay. Is the train going to be a passenger-based or cargo-based? It's going to have both. That's for you. It's going to have both cargo and passengers there. What inspired the tax to invest in SGR? Kindly hint on the railway terminal boarding facilities to be one of quality like Mombasa or Nairobi, but not less. What should we expect? Okay. Finally, as we take a break, SGR is a good investment. Government has had our cries as businessmen on the transportation of their goods, but most of us Ugandans are crying for town service railway, for public service to be able to evade or to ease the jam within the CBD there. Okay, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the positives here, but also talking about, the geopolitics. What does that look like from the west to the east, but also why are the tax interested and why did the Chinese pull out? This and more after this break.
Winning requires the stamina of a lion. But most importantly, it requires that you carry that water up the top of the hill. However, you must use a spoon. Take the water now. Go, run, climb up the hill in 72 spoons. Faster, go, go. Winning is hard, but with MTN Momo, it's easy. Simply pay or shop with Momo for a chance to win mobile money every day. Use the Momo app or dial *165 *3 hash.
Amanya nze Lutalo Steven nga ndi mutuze ku eno zone eya United Central B zone ate nga ndi chairman wa kyalo kino. Nze nga omukulembeze saafunamu oba kali twafunamu olw'abantu baffe nti baafunamu naye nze ng'omuntu kennyini nnyini saafuna kuba nali sobola kusooka kufuna nga ate abantu bange tebannafuna. Kitegeeza abantu baffe balina okusooka okufuna kati naffe omukisa bwe gunaaba guzze mu maaso naffe tulyoke tufune naye abantu bangi tebannafuna ate nze mbasobola kufuna. Ekituufu tuyinza oba tufunyemu abantu nga 31. Naye ekituufu kale tugezezzaako okulaba nga tubatetenkanyiza okulaba nga bazifuna era twagala obbeebaza naye abatannafuna be bangi. Tusaba gavumenti yeekube mu mutima esobole okuwa abantu ate kino ekyalo kyaffe kirina abantu bangi nnyo abatalina mirimu era abakyala mubalabye abatalina kapito kati obalaba basanyufu ndowooza era mubalabye mubayiseemu kati olaba bafunye kapito owa kananansi owa obutunda owa caayi kwegamba mukama mulungi naye ate singa mubadde munoonya batannafuna ndowooza mubadde temujja nafuna budde obavaamu kuba be bangi ennyo era mubadde mbawulira amalowoozi. Tusaba mutuyambe abantu abatannafuna bangi nnyo. Ekyamazima ndi musanyufu nze ng'omuntu ate nabo bennyini be basinga n'obusanyufu kubanga okuba olinga abadde talina yadde kapito w'emitwalo 10 n'abanga afunye kapito oyo essaawa eno obalabye abakyala basanyufu ekyenkomeredde kati basaaliza bano batalina ate kati kyovudde olabanga abatalina ate babasalako nnyo okugamba nti ffe mutuwadde ku kasente nabo baagala babenga bannaabwe baki bano abaafunako. Gwe mulango gwe gutwagala okukubira gavumenti eveeyo erowooze ku bantu bayo abaawansi ddala ate kino kye baakola okujja ku baawansi abasookerwako kyo kirungi nnyo nga ssente omuntu yennyini yazeefunira yennyini nga teziriiko amukonjoboddeko yadde 10. Kitegeezo ekyo kyali kyanjawulo singa bulijjo bagenda bakikola bwe batyo kyandibadde kirungi nnyo Adamu. Twagala okubeebaza mwebale kubakyalirako n'okubazzaamu amaanyi naye mmaliriza nga mbakubira omulanga abatannaba kufuna bangi nnyo mubalowoozeeko. Mwebale nnyo mwebalire ddala.
Amanya gange bampitaziwa Joseph Simbwa nkolanga kitentebe wa NRM mu luka guno gwenateeti owa NRM nkunga abantu baffe ab'omu luka guno abawejjere bafune sente za PDM pulezidenti abawadde bongere mu bizinesi zaabwe butonotono bakulaakulane kubanga naffe twagala bakulaakulanye mu kibiina kyendabye kinakalabako ebitira bulungi nnyo abaddukanya PDM bagiddukanya bulungi era akikulira Mamisima Kawuki akitambuza bulungi era abantu baffe akumye bulungi oba PDM bonna bafunye twatafunye buli asaba afunye okujjako atasaba. Omanyi abantu basooka okuyita ebitaliiyo ne bagamba nga gye byali kale bajja mu bungi era abantu basigaddeyo bangi abaagala okubawa ssente bangi naye nga nsaba Pulezidenti Museveni nga bwe yateekawo ekintu kino ayongere okiteekamu ssente nnyingi abantu bonna bafune ssente kubanga ffe twagala abantu bafune ssente babeere bulungi twagala abantu balina ssente naye nsikakaza nti wali atanafuna baje balenze okubanga batono naye nga bagenda kufuna kubanga zajjidde mu mitundutundu abasooka bafunye n'abaddako bagenda kufuna n'abanaddako n'abanaddako singa Pulezidenti ayongera mu ssente zibanga nnyingi naye omuntu ssente zafuna zasaba zafuna tiwalinga batwalako wadde 10. Abantu basooka nebigaya katusanzemu obuzi okusoomozebwa okwo nti ffe tebaatugamba naye nga twabagamba ne bakikwaki ne banyooma naye nga bagamba nti ffe tebaatugamba balondamu bantu baabwe naye bantu bonna baweebwa siga nti benaalemu oba baki bonna baweebwa kuba bonna bannayuganda ate Pulezidenti ayagala abantu bonna bannayuganda. Simba nkubira Pulezidenti Museveni Pulezidenti wange omulungi abantu bakyamwagala nnyo era ayongere tukulembera atongere atugubeyo emyaka emirala tukulaakulane ngaomanyi ayagala nnyo abantu be kyo nkimanyi naye abo atongere ssente wansi ssente zituuke wansi eno bano abalyake balina waggulu abazi bagiko aziteeke wansi mu byalo kumeruka abantu bazifune.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. A lot of your messages coming through on the number 0709 60 25 92, both on text and WhatsApp. I'll be reading some of those messages towards the tail end of the show. But today we're discussing the signing of the standard gauge railway that happened on Monday. 2.7 billion euros at stake there, and about 273 kilometers from Malaba to Kampala to be constructed in the next 4 years. Commencement is December of this year. It will have both the passenger and the cargo. The good news is that cargo between 10 to 25 million tons will be going through that, and the number of days is brought down. But also the expense, the cost between 3,500 will come down by 50%. Biggest question is, can this project be delivered on time, especially to deliver the independence or the Christmas gift, depending on how you look at it, for Ugandans then. I'm joined by an illustrious panel, and I will come back to the Honorable Minister before I get back to Canon there. Honorable Minister, sitting in the position that you sit in, something that was hinted on by Charles here, he mentioned that the countries have different economic systems. Uganda has an economic system that differs from Kenya, Tanzania the same, and if we look at their background, socialist, capitalist, but also as we've grown to 8 countries there, how do we find an intersection for all our individual country visions, interests in this thing? Because at the end of the day, shippers like him could suffer the brunt of it, just like they did from Naivasha. How do you find that area of intersection?
Yeah, from the collapse of the community in the 70s, when it was revived, we have seen a lot of progress in terms of working together, and also thank God that we have seen stability in the leadership of President Yoweri Museveni, who has also had a very significant contribution in terms of building the community. We have signed a number of protocols that we are committed to. Sometimes countries default on them, like you could expect, different countries and different people working together. But generally speaking, the community is moving forward. The East African community is moving forward. And the best way for it to move forward is if we grow our economies, if we open markets. It's important that we look at our interest in the community being the markets, prosperity for our people. Those are the two strategic, three strategic ones. The first one, security, strategic security for our area. Having a peaceful Kenya, a peaceful South Sudan is beneficial for us because Kenya, Sudan, Congo provides market for Ugandans. We should also look at it in terms of markets and look at it in terms of prosperity. So to me, there are those problems that we're experiencing as a community where we default on some of the things that we have agreed upon. But generally speaking, the community is moving forward. Moving forward will also depend on how peaceful and stable these countries remain. If we continue to be peaceful, speaking to one another, having summits of the heads of state, I've seen things moving forward. And projects like the SGR, common projects, will even facilitate the cooperation more than anything else. The projects like SGR.
Honorable, things like currency, political integration, federation haven't happened in the pillars that we have decided as the EAC. What makes you sure that markets and peace can be the game changers in how this SGR crosses the line?
Yeah, those have not happened, but we have also done protocols and issues of taxes. We have done joint projects, As you know, Uganda is investing in DRC, partnering with DRC Congo to build roads. And by building roads in DRC Congo, we have seen the growth of our exports from 250 million a few years ago now to over 500 million US dollars. And this export to DRC goes in the pockets of Ugandans. So the more we look at these countries as our markets, the more we would appreciate the community, the more we would appreciate working together. We could have done better and faster, but it's not happening. But what is happening is good enough for us to continue holding together. So I hope that a generation from generation will continue to make a contribution, and eventually we'll have a political federation for East African community. And if, when that happens, actually we will be in a better position than we are at the moment.
Honorable Minister, before I get to the canon, you talked about peace, you talked about strategic security, you talked about markets. If I am within the timeline that the canon spoke about, 4 years from December 2024, that means it will be December 2028. Uganda will have an election in 2026. Kenya will have an election in 2027. The two principles that are at the center of this SGR will have elections. If we're to piggyback by their history or just their recent past, there's been electoral violence. How do you navigate such a project that is a game changer, as you said, to ensure that we achieve the benefits you're talking about?
It will stick to the contract that we are signing with SGR and to facilitate them to make sure that they implement it on time. Uganda will have elections in 2026, and from the experience we have had in the last 30 years, to have been very peaceful, and we are looking forward. We are looking forward to, again, Ugandans voting His Excellency President Yoweri Museveni to continue real stability for this region, to continue stability for our country. So I'm not worried that these elections will affect projects like the SGR. No, they are not going to affect the SGR.
We could determine our own politics, but if, God forbid, Rigathi Gachagua is kicked out of office, and by the end of the week, a new deputy president is in, looking at the history of Kenya and the electoral violence, as the quote says, when Kenya catches a flu, Uganda sneezes. How sure are you that you or the president can manage the affairs the other side? Because every time electoral violence has happened, fuel has had a problem here, goods have had a problem in this country, trade has had the prices have gone through the roof. So what guarantees can you give about strategic security, peace, and markets as benefits for these events?
Well, I don't want to enter into the internal politics of Kenya. All I can say, we are praying that Kenya remains stable. We are praying that they resolve the political differences they have and issues faster and in a way that will give stability for Kenya, because a stable Kenya is good for a stable East African community. But I can guarantee that really the East African community is better off than it was 10 years ago, because there are quite a number of things that we are doing together. We are building SGR together. We are working on roads in DRC Congo. We are extending power to Juba. We are doing quite a number of things that will benefit Uganda. Our investment in East African community means investment in markets, means investment in prosperity, not only for Uganda, but for East African community.
Canon, coming to you, this Turkish farm you took on, reading about some of the challenges that it had in Tanzania. One was funding, especially from a Swedish bank there. Two was an uprise of about 10% of their 15,000 workforce on payment. What learnings have you had that you plan to adopt here to navigate insulating all these challenges?
Thank you very much, moderator. Those are difficult questions because they seem to be around the person of the company that we're engaging, but it doesn't mean that I can't answer it. With the financing, like I said, financing is being done by the government of Uganda. In those two tranches, direct from the treasury and from the loans. So the Sweden, that experience, like the Sweden type that you have quoted, I don't think will arise here because the funder, me have summarized, is the government of Uganda. So that will not arise. As whether they will not pay their workers, then they go on strike, I think that one there is a mechanism also in the contract.
Sorry, I wanted to add one more.
Yes.
They also had a challenge because why the length of the period went to 7 years was they ran short of funding. So those challenges they have had, what lessons have you learned from them, and how do you navigate those lessons to ensure we don't have any challenges along the way?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Nyangweso. In terms of funding given in Tanzania, we did due diligence on this company, and so we went to Tanzania. We also visited the Ministry of Transport in Tanzania. We visited the Ministry of Finance. Really, financing in Tanzania has been done by Tanzania, not by this company. It was just a facilitator. And I think therefore the 7 years delay, to me, like I said, I know partly why that delay was. It was about procurement. For example, the rail line itself was completed quite some time back, but the locomotives didn't arrive in time. When they arrived, their systems on the locomotive, we call them on-board equipment, did not arrive in time. That was outside the handling of the company. Now, ours, we are saying, let the company take responsibility of bringing in the locomotives, having them fitted with the on-board equipment. That one will not be like it was in Tanzania. I'm sorry, I'm maybe revealing too much to you, but I know it didn't have much about the financing. That one I can assure you. So about the internal squabbles where they didn't pay their workers, that one is a different matter that can be handled. We shall keep watch. I think that one we shouldn't worry. For me, I'm very positive that we have learned lessons from the other places. We have done due diligence on this company, YM. We went to UK, due diligence on them. We went to Turkey, due diligence on them. We went to Tanzania, due diligence on them. And we are satisfied that they can actually deliver. They can deliver this project on time. They can deliver this project in the cost that they cannot. Because we are going to have eyes on. That's where we are a management unit. We have also put in place, Mr. Nyangweso, a consultant in between to be our representative to directly supervise. Directly supervise. That means whatever is going to be done in the field, we shall know what is happening because we shall be living with this consultant. He's already on board. So that is one of the areas where we think we can control some of those uncertainties.
And the Honorable Minister has made mention of both Sudan and Congo and what business we're doing in both these countries in terms of money. $200 million, over $500 million. We have the northern route that you're talking about 700 kilometers up there. Then we also had the western route that has Rwanda and DRC at that, which is about, I think, 600 kilometers there. What informed Malaba, Kampala, vis-a-vis, instead of going to the northern route or the western route?
Fast.
Fast.
Fast, yes. That's the most important word. There is always what we call a backbone in a network. And in our network of 1,700 kilometers, Malaba, Kampala is the backbone. On the backbone, we can spin a line from Tororo, from the backbone to the north. Now from the backbone, we can spin a line from Kampala to Kasese and Ampondo and Rwanda. So to answer your question directly, this Malaba Kampala is the backbone of the network, which would not have been the case on the other side.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Honorable Engineer Kafero, both having been a member of parliament there and being part of a committee, let's talk about the geopolitics. China has done a lot of infrastructure in the EAC. Turkey has come in, has done lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, about to do all the 4 lots in Tanzania. Now it has come to be a player in here. What does that mean for the geopolitics between the Chinese and the Turkish, or the East and the West? And are we the grass to the elephants?
Okay, thanks, Timothy. But I would like to, first of all, allay the fears of the professor, having said that, yes, we are bringing in the SGR, but are we sure that we shall have enough cargo to rail? Yes, already now we are overwhelmed. For us at URC, every year we rail only 600,000 metric tons of cargo, and mostly imports. Why mostly imports? Because of the nature of our rolling stock. The flat wagons which we have are fitted with saddles, because we move a lot steel coils, especially for roofings. So as we bring in the steel coils, whereas we would want to go back with containers, for example, we cannot remove the saddles. So that is why now we are going in for procurement of wagons with collapsible saddles. So we already have too much cargo. Roofings alone is opening a second factory. Right now they are giving us 20,000 tons of cargo every month, but they want to give us 50,000 metric tons. That is only one client, but we have many. The cargo consolidators are here. So issues of cargo, SGR is going to be overwhelmed. Also passengers. The train we are running, the passenger train alone we are running, is already overwhelmed. So we needed SGR yesterday. Now to go back to your question, Turkey is using European standards. We also have the Chinese standard. So due diligence shows that one is better than the other. China, having constructed many railway lines in many countries in Africa, does not necessarily guarantee them a position of being number one. It's all about what the country needs, what the country wants to do or to use the railway line for, and the duration they would like the railway line to last. I am not saying that the Chinese standards are substandard, no, but you and I know that European standards are better. So if the Turkish are coming in with the European standards, we are saying yes, why don't we try this? For us in URC, we have already tested. I told you about the Spanish line of Kampala to Mukono. If you go and look at it, you will see total difference. We tried one already with the Chinese, that Malaba up to Mukono is totally different from what we are getting. So yes, whereas there's that geopolitics and the politics of this country versus the other, Uganda deserves the best in terms of standards, in terms of specifications, durability of the railway line, and value for money. So for me, and as I said much earlier, we are getting a much better deal than ever before by using the Turkish, because yes, they have done this even in Tanzania. You go and see, I've seen for myself, even on social media, the young people are praising what has happened in Tanzania. That is the same standard we want for our standard gauge railway line. So I think having the Turkish, or the Turkish here to construct, especially when they have done something in Tanzania, also has a lot to do with the maintainability of the railway line. You see now, we shall have our counterparts in Tanzania. The technology is the same, so the technical expertise that we require to maintain this new railway line and the rolling stock along with it will not be different. So I think there's no big deal about Chinese having done there and now why the Turkish. I think it's about what Uganda deserves.
Honorable, when we stick to that area, you mentioned something about maintenance.
Yes.
What is Uganda Railways Corporation's maintenance plan for the SGR, but also what is the plan for local content? What is that percentage like in terms of employability, in terms of material? What is that like?
Of course, on implementation of the SGR, there is what we call a defects liability period. That is for the track itself, but also we have a warranty period.
How long is that?
In this case, it's 1 year for the track, but also we have for the rolling stock itself, which I think will be 2 years because it's normally 2 years for the trains, the locomotives and the coaches. So that period, the maintenance is the responsibility of the supplier. Now, during that time, URC will be collaborating with the suppliers to build capacity of our own people, which we have already started, but in a different form, not on the Turkish rolling stock, but on the rolling stock we have and the new ones we are going to procure under AFDB. So when we partner, build the capacity during those 2 years, by the end of the 2 years, URC with our local Ugandans will be able to maintain both the rolling stock and the track. That is our plan. Now, when you talk about what is going to happen thereafter, as I told you, the operations is going to be under us. But of course, there should be some kind of transition period, because remember, these machines are going to be new, modern technology. I don't know whether they will be from Turkey themselves or they are going to buy from another country. There should be some kind of training to gain technical expertise for our maintenance team at URC to be able, not only the maintenance team by the way, but also the operations, because the drivers are operations.
Do you have the capacity?
Right now, as we speak, URC has 38 train drivers.
Electric?
No, diesel electric, what we are using now. But going electric, as I told you, we shall work with the Turkish for some time as we build capacity. But the difference is not so big, especially when you are on the train deck operating. There are just a few things that will come in. Also on the line, they are going to construct catenary, electric catenary for the rolling stock, which is not here. There will be some lessons on signaling, because being a high-speed train compared to what we have, we shall have some signaling that is going to be introduced. That is where we need now technical training for our people. So during the implementation of the project, there will also be capacity building. We shall be collaborating with the Turkish through the SGR project leaders to build capacity. We already have people For your information, we were guided by the minister to begin recruiting what we call graduate trainees, but also apprentices. Apprentices to take care of those who don't have bachelors, diplomas and below, and certificates, but graduate trainees, those who have bachelors and above. Now we begin giving them practical skills on driving trains, on maintaining them. We already have people. I have some in Nalukolongo workshop. The civil people have some who are already deployed. Even on the new line, there have been about 50 young people who have been working with the Spanish to gain these skills. So you can see that we are already ahead of the game. What is only awaiting is now to practice on the real new machines of SGR when they arrive.
I think the preference would be going to Tanzania and learning the machines themselves. But let me come to Mr. Kareba here. Because, Mr. Kareba, already we're going to have cables in the city. 2,000 megawatts. The president just launched 600 megawatts at Karuma. Manufacturers are saying the tariffs of power are high. Home users are saying the same. Isn't the cost of this SGR to the taxpayer, does it give you confidence? To you as a trader, to you as a shipper, do you feel when you look at the container on the road vis-a-vis the SGR, does it give you confidence?
Thank you, moderator. You see, what we call multimodal transport. You look at the cheapest means of transport, which is water. Next to water, you have rail. After rail, that's when you come to trucks. So we are now depending on the third choice. When we have the other two, we could have the other two in abundance. As I said, if in the 70s, if the railroad could handle 80%, why can't it handle 80% today? The problem is they can't guarantee delivery period. Now, for me again, if I was to look at the entire SGR project, I would have preferred an SGR project which was common to all the member states. Like it was East African railways and harbors, and now you can have East African SGR. Then the individual member states, the question of pulling out and the rest wouldn't arise. That wouldn't arise. But even when you talk about now bring down the cost, do you know what Kenya is going to charge? And from Mombasa to Maraba, it's a bigger portion than from Maraba to Kampala. Today, we fight with the Kenya Ports Authority. Please consult us before you increase your charges. Deaf ears. You wake up in the morning and these are the new rates. You're in business, you have already made contracts with your suppliers, with the clearing agents, you have already made quotations and the rest of that. The question of SGR, if you look at the benefits of it, it beats everything that you can think of. To me, I would have been looking at marrying the ports with the waterways that we have. We can have a container delivered to Kampala using rail and water without any truck involved, without involving getting onto the road, getting anywhere. You can have cargo delivered. And that is the intention of Tanzania. And that's why they came and opened up the Port Bell route, which had been abandoned. And now there is the Bukasa port coming in. That is the route. Now with the fuel, it is up to Kisumu and on water to Kampala. Those are the cheapest means of transport that we have. But they definitely, if you look at even the terms of volumes, that one locomotive from Mombasa is carrying 108 wagons. 108 wagons, those are 108 40-foot containers. So that is 216 40-footers. But if it had, because it has the capacity to double stake, so that would mean it can bring 216 40-foot containers in one go, one engine. And that would mean 216 trucks on the road. So definitely all that can be. The price will definitely go down, but there are so many things. And what I'm saying, what we call the non-tariff barriers, we have been talking about them since 1996. Up to today, we are still talking about the same. They remove one, they create another one. They remove one, they create another one. So the benefits definitely are so high, everybody cannot tell you that it is of no value. It is a lot of value, but the other things that are around it, I don't know whether it will achieve its main objective because of the other players involved, which are beyond us. Now, the question of benefit, of the profit, if you have imports which are much higher than the exports, you know what happens? The other benefit of the cost is put back because they are going to charge you for empty running back to Mombasa. They're not going to do it free of charge. So they can bring it from Mombasa to here for $1,600, but they're definitely going to put another $700-800
for taking it back.
To take it back. So you are not talking about 1.6. Add on that, and you are back in 2,000 plus. So there are a lot of things that we need. Two, when you talk of DRC, there was a presidential roundtable summit in Dar es Salaam in 2015. There was a World Bank report. If there was peace in Eastern DRC, the cargo which is available in that part of this world alone, Mombasa port, Dar es Salaam port, and even if you had on Lamu, wouldn't be able to handle all the cargo available by 2035. So the question is not market. Market is there. I don't even know why we go to Europe where the standards are so high. You have, you take a truck to DRC, in 30 minutes they bought everything, they're paying cash in dollars. Why do you want to send something to Belgium and they want it every Friday, not Saturday? You know? So the standard gauge is definitely a good idea, but I'm worried about the other non-tariff barriers that hang around it.
And staying with you, Mr. Karewa, the heavy investment, before I come to Professor, the heavy investment in infrastructure. When we look at the Nile Bridge, $112 million, 80% of that came from the Japan government there, JICA. When we look at the bypass, the express to Entebbe, we look at it at a cost of 9.2. We look at Uganda Airlines there. The cost of doing business, what does that mean for you with SGR, with power costs now, with what you've already mentioned, which is about 2,400, maintenance costs, empty cargoes? What does it look like for you as a person who is in this business for the cost of business? Does it come down?
On paper, it can come down. But in reality, because remember, this is money that is going to be paid. It may not be me now, but either to be my son or my grandson or daughter. It still has to be paid. So we can't say that it's okay now. No, you're just postponing
a problem.
If that money is still to be paid, you cannot say that it's going to bring down the cost. Because what you bring down, what you should have brought down on the cost, then you are putting it on repayment of what you have borrowed.
Thank you very much. Finally, Professor, how do we get the public, both the people and the trading public, to buy into this SGR? Because what we saw in Tanzania in the launch of June, July this year was magnificent. It had first class, it had a very organized system. It looked magnificent. President Suruhu presented it well, and the transportation is easy. Dodoma to Dar es Salaam, what is 8 hours is now 4 hours. So how do we have buy-in of the public in this?
Thank you, Timothy. I think we don't need to really labor much to get the public to buy in. Once there's a good transport system on the roads, people are going to use it. What you saw, of course, in Dodoma, there was, as you say, big launch with musicians and trying to make this actually look very special. There had been a similar one in Kenya, and the meme then was to compare that with our little train that moves from Kampala to Namamve and back, and with all the jokes. So you can see when the one from Kampala to Namamve is used, okay? So if you brought a better train, people will still use it. People are looking for alternatives, cheaper alternatives to transport. What is our major use? Of course, if you have your car, you drive it, but you also know how long it takes you to sit in the traffic in Kampala. And so those who don't have their own cars, of course, use taxis, but you see it gets expensive each time the fuel costs go up. But also there are these inconveniences. It cannot move at this time because there are no people. Then it goes forward, then it goes backwards. So if you had good transport means, like what you saw in Dodoma and what you saw in Nairobi, you wouldn't need much convincing of the people to use. They will use it. You just need to go downtown and you see how we struggle to get onto those buses to go up country. If there's something better really and safer, people will definitely use it. But that is on the movement of people. But I'm more worried about the movement of goods. Of course, people have talked a lot what happens in rails, which I really don't know much about. But I think in layman's terms, we should not just be thinking of bringing in importation, but we should also be thinking of also exporting. Of course, we know that more than half of Africa's GDP, or most of half of Africa's production, is just done by 5 countries. And you're talking about countries like Algeria, Nigeria, Egypt, South Africa, and Ethiopia. Okay? So the rest of us, the remaining countries, we are contributing to the other 50%. So if we are going to engage in mega projects like this, which are very, very expensive, it is important that actually they get their worth of investment. It is very heavy investment. It's very long-term investments. Maybe the benefits may not be seen in our times, but let them not actually go back empty. Of course, now we are talking about bringing things from Mombasa and bringing things from the DRC. I don't know why we are not talking about transporting things from Uganda. Is that an indictment of the low production we have? So we are talking Mombasa and DRC, okay? And they are going to work with peace. We shall be able to move things across. But what will Uganda be producing as they go the North Corridor and then the South Corridor and everything? I think this is high time, like the Honorable Minister said, to use this to catalyze production in our other areas. I know we've talked about production for a long time, but like I said before, our production remains small scale. It remains, if you're talking about agriculture, it's peasantry, not much services there, not much investment. The loans that we have in this country operate like everyone is a businessman, in that you get a loan today, you must begin repaying it in a month. So if someone is into animal production and into crop production, where at least the shortest turnaround time is 6 months, some of those things do not work. But I also know that one of the things we have complained about with regard to markets and production has been lack of infrastructure, particularly transport infrastructure. So this is one of the answers to that. But what we need to do is maybe merge it with other forms of infrastructure. Of course, people have talked about coal, other sources of energy, but also value addition to what we produce. What is it that we intend to produce? So can this also be a catalyst to industrialization with regard to adding value to our goods, so that when we're talking about transporting, we are not just talking about oil and coal and other things. We know that we have a comparative advantage in agriculture. So if we want to export a lot of things, I know before the Sudanese war in 2013, we used to take there a lot of foodstuffs, but you see they are perishable. So now we are going to talk about longer distances, of course within a short time, but they have to be of good quality if we are going to play in that kind of game. So I think the SGR is a good innovation or it's a good investment. People don't need much convincing to use, okay? But those who plan for the country have to ensure that it's not just another additional layer of debt where we don't have much out of it. And of course, we can benefit much out of it if it catalyzes so many other things that will increase production, but also increase people's livelihoods and their welfare.
Thank you. Professor, before I give the team here their parting shots, let me first read some feedback that has come through here. Good evening, Timothy and the panelists. From experience, many government projects have kicked off very well with a lot of promise, but stalled along the way. What guarantees do we have for SGR, and will it be different? This is Chakala. Thank you very much. Timothy, thank you for the show. Procurement system in this country is shady. I remember Chogam, a big pen was at about 5,000. Secondly, Uganda Railways Corporation is talking about Busoga Line and Jinja Industrial Area railway lines. What about Kasese? This is Sam from Jinja. Okay. Thank you for the program. This is Opio. Please, I'm tired of government and president directives, words without actions. Like the railway isn't even working from Kampala to Soroti up to Lira. How come it can work from Uganda to Kenya? That is a big lie. If I see potholes from Kampala City Council field, maybe then I will trust government. One man's leadership is no longer working. Okay. Good evening, Timothy. Thank you for hosting the show. Very resourceful personnel there. We appreciate the insightful contribution, strategic direction of our country, taking it into a secure future. Could Canon shed light on the Naivasha Malaba line on the Kenyan side, which is supposed to be the one there, and why it's stalling? Otherwise, we are very optimistic and positive on what God has started, He will accomplish, especially in a very patriotic and trusted country that the Canon is talking about there. Okay, Canon, I hope you've taken note of that one. The SGR is a huge project, but considering the fact that the SGR from Kenya starts from Mombasa to Naivasha, the Ugandan SGR is useless until Naivasha Malaba is done. How many are supplied? Do not continue with the road in Congo and South Sudan since the railway is coming. Okay. Thank you, Timothy, for the show. The Honorable explained that the nation's critical issues is raised by Professor about checkpoints and border taxes for both imports and exports. Ezekiel watching from Arua. Last two here. Thank you for the topic. I commend your wisdom for having picked a legendary Pan-Africanist and East African trade database, Mr. Kareba. Okay? I wish he was a Minister of Trade.
I can appoint him tonight.
This is a threat. I join Professor Sarah in celebrating the standard gauge railway idea, but the reservation. I wish to draw you back to Honorable Ham's laying of the fabric optic cable, Lubowa Hospital, Namanve Industrial Park, NADS, Operation Chidachonka, Emioga. Okay, quite a number of projects that have failed here. And finally, first of all, I want to congratulate the people of Uganda upon this landmark signing of the SGR. We're looking forward to seeing this constructed. The Turkish contractor is doing the most of the construction. How will the people of Uganda come in? Will Ugandans provide any service? This is David Mbogo. Okay, those are enough messages because there are quite a number that have come through. But I'll give parting shots and I'll start with Professor, Mr. Kareba, I'll go to Honorable, Canon, and finally the Honorable Minister. Starting with you, Professor.
Yes, thanks, Timothy. I think listening to the messages, people are not opposed to the standard gauge railway. Yes. I think everyone's like everyone here. They think it's a good project. They think it's high time it occurred. The pessimism is arising from they don't trust that it can be delivered. And they, of course, they are referring to a number of failed projects or slowed projects as evidence for their pessimism. I think that is a challenge to us, but also a challenge to people who are in charge of these processes to ensure that actually this time it delivers. It doesn't just go the path everyone has said. But having said that, you know, Africa has struggled for a long time to assert herself since colonialism. And of course, those who led Africa to independence talked about self-determination, African unity, and everything. But of course, it has become progressively clear that without development, without economic means, all those things will just be rhetoric. So we can no longer choose underdevelopment. We must plan for development. Development costs money, and it costs big money because these are long-term things. So we don't have an option out of these matters. What we need to do is to make them more productive. Of course, paying attention to some of the sentiments, are these projects just going to run with foreign labor, or can they also be low-hanging fruits to resolve some of our other problems, like unemployment? But I think as we do that and as we celebrate the railway, let us not forget the things which continue to divide us as a continent, the different tariff barriers, the different checkpoints, the mere fact that foreigners go through these countries, sometimes without visas, but the rest of us who occupy the continent have to prove our worth at each checkpoint. Because you can imagine if the SGR was to go and carrying maybe more than 500 people and they have to be checked at every kind of checkpoint, it will be slowed down, so the speed we celebrate will not be there. So I think let us pursue development. It will be costly, but let's pursue it in a very efficient manner. And as we do that, let us also check on the ecosystem challenges in which these things are going to run. Because unless we resolve them, they're also going to be white elephants. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Timothy, if you remember COW, Coalition of the Willing, actually that's the first time. That was a continuation of the beginning of it, of Mike Kibaki and President Museveni coming up with that. So when they added on the cow on the Northern Corridor, they got President Kagame on board. And that was supposed to be the same SGR from Mombasa up to Kigali. As I said, if you can get this as one unit and all of us have an interest in it, how could we have Rwanda cross the Rwanda-Uganda border? It would have been very difficult for either themselves or us. Then when Kenya broke off, Rwanda also decided to, that's the time we had our problems, decided to go to Tanzania. Now, to go to Tanzania, that SGR is supposed to go to Rwanda and then divert to Burundi. But now there is a problem between Burundi and Rwanda. So it can't even divert to Burundi anymore. So Tanzania has decided to divert it to Msongati in Burundi without going through Rwanda. So all these are things that, when you remember when the cow was, and all these are years that have been wasted on the things that could have been very beneficial to this region in terms of what the minister was talking about, you know, industrialization and development and the rest of this, because consistency of those decisions becomes a problem. But we should not stop doing it, and we should continue talking and talking and talking, and think at one time things will happen.
Thank you very much. Honorable Kafero.
I would like to thank the callers, or the people who have sent the messages. One of them asked that we are talking about the Busoga line. How about the Kasese line? You realize that
actually said that the Soroti-Lira line.
Yes, also that one. Also that one. Yes, but the Kasese line, since the old meter gauge line was lifted, government took a decision that now we should construct the standard gauge railway. So it's a project that now is under Canon Perez here for construction. The Soroti one, right now we have a Chinese contractor working on a line, on a 375-kilometer line from Tororo up to Gulu. That is via Soroti. It is going to be completed mid next year,
That's
So
the meter.
the meter gauge. The caller there or the message sender should be waiting for trains to start working the next or the second half of next year. So the president is not lying, it is factual, because it's government of Uganda funding that very project. A message from the MD of Uganda Railways Corporation, who I have represented on this show, Mr. David Musoke Bulega. He thanks all the users of the passenger train. You know, we are overwhelmed. People are using the train, and we need more coaches. So he's telling you that we are about to launch the first train from Kampala to Mukono, because now the line is finished. So the Mukono people, you should have realized that we are working on the halts where we're going to be stopping. So anytime from now, the MD is saying he will be inviting you to have a ride in the first train. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That's very good information. Canon Perez.
Thank you very much, viewers and the moderator. First of all, I want to respond to the anxiety about Kenya stopping in Naivasha, and for us, we're up a bit about SGR. It's like we're going nowhere. I want to assure you, since the beginning, I think, of this year, we have been in a conversation and consultation with Kenya Railways and the Kenya government. Kenya government is very determined to stretch that rail line from Naivasha to Malaba. They don't have choice, by the way. It's not even for our sake just. It is for the sake of Kenya and us. Kenya has got a live experience, good enough. My brother knows the amount of cargo that comes from Nairobi to Naivasha. When one train comes to Naivasha, one SGR train comes to Naivasha, Kenya Railways marshals 5 trains to evacuate that cargo, and that is a pain in Kenya Railways. They have been forced to buy locomotives and wagons, and therefore Kenya is determined to stretch that rail line from Naivasha to Malaba. That one we are very positive. At ministerial level, they have agreed. At our technical level, we have harmonized the specifications and standards. So, caller there, your concern was right, but that is the answer. That those of you who have been say, well, this has been taking long. Yes, that's how I started, Mr. Nyangweso. I said the vision came out through His Excellencies in 2008. We picked it out and we ran with it. But the Bible told us, even if it delays, wait for it. We've been waiting for it and it has arrived. And that's my take on it. And just to also allay fears or concerns of our sister Sarah about what are we taking out. The minister talked about iron ore in Muko. That iron ore, when it is extracted, we are not going to export it as iron ore. We shall convert it into iron. And then steel, that steel, a lot of it will be exported. It will be exported on this SGR. There are minerals in Imbale there called vermiculite. It's you excavate it like a soil, but inside the soil there's a lot of things. But even after you have extracted all the things that I'm talking about, the residue itself is a fertilizer. And that's a quantity, it is in big volumes. I'm sure a lot of this will be exported to countries like Kenya and Tanzania. Through where? Through SGR. The other day, I think you heard the minister say, Uganda plans or intends to export 12 million bags of coffee. I hope you heard that. Where will this go? It's getting out of this country. And this is the hope. Its hope is for this. Now I talk lastly about the local content. Our local is going to participate. I think we should have answered it earlier. In the contract, we have reserved 40% of works and services to be provided by the local population. Now what I would call upon the local population is this: to be honest, first of all, in whatever you're going to do. But the contractor will want quantity. If you say, I'm going to supply this quantity, supply that quantity. But it must be quality. But above all, it must be timely. Because we're talking about 48 months. We as local suppliers should not delay the contract and we give them an excuse. That is what I'm saying. But 40% of this contract is about the local content.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Lastly, the Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank the viewers and the people who have made some calls and sent messages about this important project. I can hear some a little bit worried about the implementation, the speed of implementation, and I hope, Canon, you have heard and you'll be able to supervise this project so that it is executed on time. But also those who have doubts, you should not go far. There are some very good projects that this government has implemented. Recently, we launched Karuma, 600 megawatts. We have seen the Express, Entebbe Express. You saw the Ginger Bridge. The roads are going on. And yes, if you decided to look at projects which have failed, you can find some, but also there are good projects that this government has implemented. So with all this development in terms of the SGR, we hope that will facilitate trade. We hope that Ugandans will participate, and we hope that Ugandans will not forget the vision bearers of this project when it comes to 2026. And finally, let me take this opportunity to really greet our people, the wonderful people of Ndogwa County West in Kabale District, and the people of Kabale for all the support you continue to give us as NRM and myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. Professor, thank you always for coming. We appreciate that you spent your time here. The production team that has made today possible, both in the control room, but also the ones that have been behind the cameras to make sure today happens. I will end it with this African proverb. A wise man never takes a step too long for his leg. Good morning.
UBC inspire.